Hello and welcome to the My Barcode Life podcast. My name is Rod Bolt. I am the Barcode Channel Manager here at Toshiba. Today we are talking about all things barcode and all things transport, the Scan4Transport. My guest today is Michael Rugaver. Have I got that right?
Yeah, Rugaver.
Rugaver. Excellent. Thank you, Michael, for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So what I want to talk about today is a few different topics around Scan4Transport, but I'd like to really sort of get your background first on who you are, where you've come from, and where you are now with up to date. So a little bit of brief history for the people.
Oh, look, I guess I've been working with GS1 standards for 20 odd years. So I started off in retail, spent a little bit of time in the solution provider sort of space. And then over the last 10 years have been with GS1, and the recent focus has very much been on the freight and logistics industry, so transporting of freight, as well as things like rail and industrial, so those sorts of industries that they've got rugged requirements for barcoding.
Yeah. And how did that sort of lead into like where you were to lead into where you are now? So, from what, now with, we'll start getting to Scan4Transport, which seems to be a pretty good thing for supply chain standards. But how did things lead into that? Where did that build from?
All right. Well, GS1 is a global standards body that works with industry to address challenges within the industry, and so. Here in Australia, we've got 22,000 members, which make up retailers and suppliers and logistics service providers. And through initially the ALC, the Australian Logistics Council Working Group, those shippers, so retailers and manufacturers and the logistics service providers came to us and said, we've got some real challenges in the industry around efficiency, interoperability, and visibility of freight. And what they looked at is the retail industry, which 50 years ago came together in a similar fashion and said, look, we want to start using barcoding in the industry to create those efficiencies. The retail industry has been very standardised for the last 50 years. However, here in Australia, when it came to the transport industry, so freight transport, it's very fragmented.
Yeah.
And so in essence, as a shipper, right, maybe a supplier, many of them typically have 5 different transport companies.
Yeah.
Maybe one transport company to do, let's say, the local deliveries.
Yep.
Sometimes another transport company to maybe to do interstate or international deliveries.
Yep.
And then some that may specialise in pallets versus satchels, little deliveries. And when you take that into account, so when a supplier might have 5. But a retailer might have 100 different transport companies. That starts to create problems when they're all using different formats or different standards for labelling the freight. And in Australia, there's actually 40,000 companies in logistics service providers. So you can imagine if all of them are using different labelling formats. Right, different barcoding formats.
Yep.
It creates a huge amount of complexity that really doesn't need to be there.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, if we're all here today, we're speaking English because it's a common language.
Yep.
Doesn't matter that at home, I might speak a different language and you speak a different language,
yep.
but we've agreed upon speaking English to communicate. Well, this is what the transport industry wanted to do.
I know, I remember when I first started. Yeah, I mean, putting a SSCC label on parcels going out and everything like that was, the exact, the label. And I guess I didn't even think about the fact that, that many, transport and logistics companies really exist. And, you'd like to think that every single one of them are following GS1 standards. So I guess something like the Scan4Transport standard and those labelling guidelines would definitely kind of bring everything together. So I've said the word Scan4Transport a few times. Explain exactly what Scan4Transport is.
All right. So the SSCC that you're referring to, that was something that was very much to uniquely identify every bit of freight, right? Serial shipping container code. And think of that a little bit as a license plate on a car, right? You're driving behind a car, you see a license plate in front of you, and all you really see is a number. And that number at the end of the day is a key that gets looked up in a system. So here in Victoria, we've got Vic Roads, right? You go to Vic Roads, you give them that license plate, and they can tell you, well, who's the owner of that car. Now, obviously, you and me, they wouldn't tell, but the police, they would, for example, right?
Yes.
The SSCC is similar, right? When you look at that number, you can go to GS1, right?
Yep.
And GS1 can say, well, that SSCC belongs to a particular company. If you want to know more about it, go to that particular company.
Yes.
The problem in the transport industry is that the freight, while it's identified, there is an instruction somewhere that tells someone where that freight needs to go, right?
Yep.
And if all that people have to go by is that ID key, and they may not have an electronic message yet to tell them where the freight's going to, they have to go back to manual processes to look at the address on the label, for example, to see where the freight's going to. So what Scan4Transport did is Scan4Transport took all that minimum information you need to keep the freight moving. So what's the company that it's going to, or the contact? What's the address? Is there particular handling instructions, like is it dangerous goods? Have I got authority to leave the freight if I get to the location and there's no one there answering the door? It's putting all that information in a standard format into a barcode so that any party along the supply chain can scan that barcode and capture that information without having to rely on having received an electronic message like a transport instruction telling them where the freight needs to go to. And that's been really critical in creating that resilience in the supply chain. When a bit of freight's been picked up before an electronic message has been received. And in particular in the last mile where, in a lot of those depots, a driver might go in and they'll just pick up whatever boxes are lying on the floor. They don't have an electronic message saying, oh, you've got 10 boxes to pick up today. They'll just go into the depot and they'll pick up whatever boxes are relevant for them, and then they'll bring it to the final destination. And again, typically that can be a very manual process because they're picking up these boxes and they're manually sorting them, saying, oh, well, I should do this one first, and then if I drive over here, I can drop that one off, and then if I drive over there, I'll go, drop the final box off. What Scan4Transport enables them to do is to be able to scan that barcode, bring all that barcode into the system, and think of it a bit like Google Maps, plot the path of all the destinations, work out the most efficient route to deliver the freight.
And how, so this sounds like, global revolutionary stuff that everybody should get on board with and everything like that. How has this been picked up? Has it been well received? Like I can see from videos and everything online, which I've been able to find, people have been excited by it. How has that been your experience?
Yeah, definitely. So back in 2019, when the global working group officially kicked off, that group sort of developed the standards, and that had logistics service providers and shippers and solution providers and GS1 representatives from around the world, and so we had 21 countries represented within that group to develop the standards.
That's big.
We then in early 21 ran pilots. In every continent around the world there to I guess prove that that minimum standard that we had for encoding into the barcode that met the needs of the local industries. And so that was very well received, and now we're in that stage of rolling out, and one of the challenges of rolling out is making sure that existing businesses with existing processes and infrastructures can continue to operate. And that's why things like the GS1 128 barcode is still sitting on that freight and logistics, that transport label. And those that can then leverage the power of a 2D barcode, they can scan that and pull the Scan4Transport information out of that barcode.
So talk about the GS1 and 128 and on the barcode, and then give us sort of a rough that label layout. I don't know whether my listeners have had a see of it. It's got 2D barcode, and it's got some have one or two GS1 128 barcodes on there, and there's a bunch of addresses, and you've got a whole pile of information on there. Is there, what are the guidelines around the actual label itself? Like, is there sort of specific minimums that you need to have on this label to comply with the Scan4Transport standards?
Yeah, so there's two parts to the question there, right?
Yeah.
And to the answer there. So some receivers of freight, think of major Australian retailers, for example, they might need a GS1 logistics label, so the SSCC label that we've known for many years to be sitting on the freight. There are many other deliveries around Australia, to your house, to my house, to other businesses that may not have that traditional GS1 logistics label. But all of them will have a transport label. I think that the transport label is the Scan4Transport label. And so that guideline, at the end of the day, the minimum data that needs to be in it is the SSCC, the license plate of the car, let's put it that way, right? That's the ID. But then depending on the country, you'll add more information to the barcode. So here in Australia, you'd always, if you think of an address label, you'd always put at least the name of the company that the freight's going to, or at least a contact person, and we use a street address. And we have a suburb, and we have a postcode, and a state. Other parts of the world, they might only have a street address and a postcode. Right. So there is no minimum standards as such in the guideline, other than the SSCC. That's the minimum bit of data. But there's a whole range of application identifiers, a whole range of data elements that you can put inside the barcode. That anyone along the supply chain can pull that if they need it, and if they don't need it, they ignore it.
One thing I have noticed looking through it, there's two things that I've noticed, that you've got the GS1 QR code on some of them, and then you've got GS1 data matrix codes on others, in similarities to things like healthcare, where they restrict to only using GS1 data matrix. Is that something that the Scan4Transport standard is looking towards, is just restricting to only one type of 2D code, or is the QR or the data matrix going to be, what's the lean-to for this?
There's two typical approaches in Scan4Transport. One is more addressing the way things have always been done, the current market. And the second approach is more of a futuristic, forward-looking approach. And so the GS1 data matrix, we're saying a lot of businesses that are currently doing GS1 SSCC labels and have got their current GS1 logic built into their systems, they'll typically start by that particular approach. And that's where the data elements are concatenated, so stuck together inside that barcode, and people can extract the data out of it. The QR code symbol, that's part of a more forward-looking approach, and we take that same data elements, but instead of sort of sticking them together the traditional GS1 way, we represent them as a URL or a URI. And so what that then means is that effectively any phone or any smart device, if they were to scan a QR, they realise that, this looks a bit like a web address, right? Should I follow it? And in this particular approach, what Scan4Transport enables people to do is to be able to scan that QR code, pull that minimum data out, like who's it going to, what's the address, how does it need to be handled, is there a particular date it needs to be delivered by? But what it also enables them to do is to go, well, would you like to follow the URL? And that URL might go to a website that'll give them up-to-date information, tracking information, whereas it being, it gives that real opportunity for that last mile driver, for example, to scan the QR code and maybe access the most up-to-date transport instructions. Right, Michael's not going to be home today because he's down at doing a podcast. So maybe I'll change the permissions to give him authority to leave the freight because I know I'm not going to be home.
That sounds like so much technology is in those 2D codes in comparison to 1D codes. why are we continuing with using 1D codes on this label?
Yeah, well, look, GS1 standards are all about supporting industry and not just being forward-looking, but also being, taking care of, the past and what industry is currently using. So we need to make sure that as these labels are being introduced into industry, that those that are still using the more traditional approaches can still continue to operate their businesses. So, the 1D barcode will be in there, the GS1 128 will be in there for a long time. I don't see that going anytime. But certainly I see a lot more businesses start to take advantage of the 2D barcode.
Yeah. I mean, we're now seeing that in supermarkets on fresh produce and everything like that. It's amazing that we can get it down to the produce level. So...
And look, that's exactly it, right? So, one of my favourite quotes from one of the work group participants, and it's certainly in the pilot report that you can download, is Scan4Transport makes freight talk. And,
like that,
and it really does. Because in essence, when you scan that freight can now tell you, hey, I'm on the wrong truck. I'm going in the wrong direction. You can say, hey, I'm running late.
Yes.
Or, hey, be careful. I've got some dangerous goods on board. You need to handle me a different way than you normally handle freight.
Yep. And now I just want to sort of tap into, for people, EDI just for 2 seconds, which is a big part of transport and logistics. We're talking about it's talking. Like, how does that go when it comes to, real time, connection back to either the person sending the goods and the person receiving the goods? What does this do for that? Yeah.
So look, electronic data interchange, or EDI, it has been used for many years, and it's basically, think of it, an electronic message. An email is an electronic message, but it's not traditionally EDI. But think of it like an email, right?
Yeah.
When you send that email, you might send that message saying, today I want you to deliver this freight from A to B, and I don't give you permission to leave the freight unless someone signs for it. Yeah. But once the freight's left your business, those instructions may change. The freight actually might pass, as I said, between multiple transport companies along its journey from A to B. And not all those transport companies may be able to receive the EDI message because it just isn't forwarded to them, or they don't have the capability, or, as I said, there's 40,000 different transport companies, 40,000 different languages. They don't know how to speak them all. So what the Scan4Transport barcode enables them to do is to first and foremost capture that minimum information that they need, but then use the QR code to, I guess, locate that source system to follow that link to a system that gives them that latest transport instruction. So the barcode is certainly complementary to the EDI process, but it's an alternative as well to give those parties that don't have the EDI message or don't have the capability to get the EDI message to get the information electronically.
So just, I love that idea of up-to-date information back and forth between two different sources and being able to track and trace your parcel much better than wondering where is it, and then suddenly it's at your door and it's like, I wanted to receive a message. The fact that you can put in the barcode, key things to say, hey, I want you to send information back to this source. I want you to send information back to that source, and also it came from this postal code and it's going to this postal code as well. So lots of good fun things coming from GS1 QR codes and GS1 data matrix, but we can definitely see the bridge going forward with being able to incorporate URLs or URIs for consumer scanning as well.
Oh, look, any party. And so, there's that opportunity that if that URI links back to that source system, you could ask the consumer when they receive the goods to scan that same barcode and then trigger maybe the registration of the warranty if it was for the delivery of a TV. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
You can track exactly when something actually really did arrive to the person, so you can claim warranty on things and work out all sorts of little fine details. We're talking about that now with the forward looking. What can we expect? I mean, I was sort of there, when I was working for my previous company, there sort of at the start when I saw the initial label design and everything all first produced and before everything really took off. And I've even seen changes in the Scan4Transport standard since I was sort of first looking at it. So things are always constantly evolving and changing and everything like that. What can you see in the future for Scan4Transport?
So the next steps really for Scan4Transport is now for industry to get on board.
Mm-hmm.
So the pilots have shown that it works,
mm-hmm.
that it provides huge amounts of benefits.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense for everyone to keep talking their own language, different languages.
Yes.
We need to start standardising to improve efficiency,
yep.
Interoperability and resilience and visibility and all those sorts of wonderful things that the supply chain needs. The standard will always continue to evolve.
Yep.
As industry changes.
Yes.
One of the most recent additions are to be able to put things like geolocations inside the Scan4Transport barcode.
Yep.
And this is really useful for rural deliveries or deliveries of materials to building sites, for example, where a street address may not exist, like on a building site.
Yeah.
Or a street address might not be granular enough.
Yes.
If you're delivering out to the outback,
yeah.
or wherever, you might have an address that actually is the size of a kilometre,
yeah,
or even bigger, and you need to know, well, exactly which driver should I go down to deliver this freight. So Scan4Transport now enables you to encode a geolocation into that barcode.
That's fantastic.
And know exactly which driver you need to go down, for example, to go to. But also Scan4Transport enables you to capture the global location number of the address you're delivering to.
Yep.
And again, via a link.
Yep.
Go to the National Location Registry.
Yep.
And find out more information about that particular address, like certain requirements, to go onto that particular site, safety requirements, or certain trucks that will or will not fit on the site.
Yeah.
Are there operating hours for that site? So if you're going to go make a delivery to the site, it would be useful to know that closes at a certain hour and so forth.
Sounds exciting. Do you think something like, I know GS1 has RFID standards and everything like that, and of course you can incorporate RFID. Do you think RFID will become part of the Scan4Transport standard in itself as something that, from a transport and logistics point of view, to start using RFID?
Yeah, look, one of the benefits of RFID over barcodes is that you don't necessarily have to see the RFID tag like a barcode. You need to bring a scanner to a barcode and scan the barcode, while RFID, you can sense it. It passes through a doorway and you know that the freight that's there. The freight industry, certainly I've seen RFID being used for things like roll cages and containers to be able to track the movement of that. I certainly think RFID will be used in conjunction with Scan4Transport.
Eventually,
eventually. And I know in other parts of the world, like in Brazil, for example, the postal network there is actually standardising and using RFID on freight. So it's certainly, we can see it being used together, in the future as businesses and countries start rolling out things like Scan4Transport.
It sounds, everything sounds so exciting. Like, I think baby steps first. Just got to get everybody on board with using the same standard, and that definitely sounds like it's something that, hopefully not too much of an uphill battle. No,
and look, implementing Scan4Transport does not mean throwing out your existing infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can use the same software that you've been using today to do Scan4Transport. Think of Scan4Transport as just adding another label format to the software.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully that's the last label format you'll ever add, right? Because it's the global standard.
Yep.
And so just like in your software, in the future, you would turn the English language on to start speaking, and see your instructions in English.
Yes.
You'll turn Scan4Transport on as being your default sort of format.
Yep.
Your existing scanners, providing that they can scan a 2D barcode, which in general, most scanners, I think, over the last 10 years that you've purchased should be able to scan 2D barcodes.
Yes.
there's no need to upgrade your hardware or your infrastructure. You just need to upgrade the programming, the logic, being able to decode the data that's in the standard format.
Yeah.
It's more just about awareness, and that's one of the biggest things now, is that making people aware. So if you are a shipper, and you're talking to your transport companies, or you're looking to set up a new transport provider for your business, the conversation is normally, well, do you want to use your format or do you want to use my barcode format?
Yeah.
Going forward, the conversation should be, well, let's just use an international format. Right?
Yeah.
Let's use the global standard. And then that way, it makes it easier to set up new shippers, to set up new transport providers.
Yep.
You save a lot of costs in the setup process, in the maintenance process.
Yep.
I can't see any negatives.
Oh,
see why you wouldn't want.
And yeah, look, coming from a consumer side of it, you can always just get your regular thermal printers. Software side, and working with a transport company, if you came to them and said, okay, I want to use this Scan4Transport, do they have to sign up or anything like that? Does the transport company, or is they can just literally embed and just go, okay, well we'll start using the Scan4Transport? What's the process? I mean, it sounds like something that even the transport company might need to have to talk to somebody and go somewhere to start setting this sort of thing up.
Yeah, so GS1 standards are open and global.
Yep.
And some companies need to sign up and join, as you said, right, to get their own unique numbers.
Yes.
And others just use the system, but it costs them absolutely nothing. Right?
Yeah.
So think about it. If I go back to you refer back to retail often, right?
Yes.
If you think about that barcode on your can of soft drink.
Yeah.
Right. The company that put that barcode on that can of soft drink, they went to GS1 and they registered the number for that can of Coke.
Yeah.
The supermarket that scans that can of Coke, they don't have to be with GS1. They just need to know what the GS1 logic is to be able to decode the barcode. And so I guess what I'm outlining is that some businesses will be using GS1 and have no idea that they've been using them for many years. Think about all the little milk bars and the little convenience stores who may not know anything about GS1.
Yeah.
But other businesses like the large manufacturers, they know us very well and they know the standards, and they come to us for more information and for advice to on how to implement. And so that's certainly what shippers should do. Shippers that are looking to implement the Scan4Transport standards will be able to go to the GS1 Australia website and www.gs1au.org and then find out more information about Scan4Transport from there.
It sounds very exciting. I'm really happy to be talking with you today, Michael. We'll sort of start to wrap it up there, and thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Michael, for joining me today.
Pleasure.
And everybody have a good day.